Taylor here with Traveling Taylor, and I get this question a lot, and it's how do you become a digital nomad? So I see this question in my Facebook groups, on Quora, on Reddit, pretty much anywhere you hang out online, and people want to know how do you get started as a digital nomad. So today I'm giving you my top 5 tips and I guess more like a process of how you actually become a digital nomad if that's something that you want to do. Step number 1 is to make a plan. So I am not of the mindset to just go, just go and figure it out. There are people who can do that and who have done that and say it's the best thing that they ever did. I am a planner, I'm an organizer, and so that actually really stresses me out. I also think that you need to have some sort of plan and structure in place. Otherwise, you might go for 3 or 4 months, not figure it out, and then just have to come back home. So if you really want to go long term, if you really want to make this your lifestyle, because that's what it is, it's a lifestyle change. It's a choice that you're making, and that might take some time to actually become fruitful and become a reality. So to make a plan, you need to think about how you're going to make an income, where you're going to live, where you want to go, and things like that. So, number 1, make a plan. For me personally, my plan took me almost 2 years to fully get to where I wanted to be. Now, you might be able to do yours a lot faster than that, so depending on your current situation. But for me, that included going on my first solo international trip and seeing if I could actually do it, right? If I actually wanted to live that lifestyle. I was gone for 10 days and I went to Europe. So I went to a place that was a little familiar, but I went to a couple countries that I'd never been to before, and I absolutely loved it. So once that happened, then I was in, mindset, everything. I was like, this is my goal. This is what I wanted to do. I had also interned in London at one point, so I knew what it was like to actually live in another country. Based on those 2 experiences, I knew I didn't want to just do short-term trips for the rest of my life. I wanted to actually spend some time in each place, and I found that I could do it on my own. So that was sort of my first test for myself to see if I could do it. And then from there, I made a plan to start my online business. I made a plan to quit my job, what I was going to do to kind of in between while I built up my business after I quit my job. So I got a part-time job, moved in with my mom, and then I actually went overseas. That was sort of the path and journey that I took. Everyone's is going to look a little different, just saying make a plan. Number 2, you need to figure out what kind of online job you're going to do. So if you don't already have an online job, which I didn't, I had an office job. I was a study abroad advisor. What can you do online? This was in my last video, so you can actually go watch that video, and I break down a remote worker versus a freelancer versus an entrepreneur. But you need to decide what it is that you're going to do online to actually make money. In my case, I became a virtual business assistant, and then I added an Amazon product and started selling that. And then later on, I added my blog and my YouTube channel. So I've done different things and I've slowly added different stuff. You don't want to do too much at first, but you do need to figure out what your skill is and what you can actually do online to get started. Step number 3 is figure out some of your travel plans ahead of time. So if you're going to do this long term and this is going to be your new lifestyle, you're not going to figure out everything in advance. And in fact, I know a couple of people who plan 8 or 9 months worth of flights and travel and accommodation and everything in advance before they left, because that was just their personality. That's what made them feel better about it. And they kind of wish they hadn't done quite that much ahead of time. I planned that I was going to go to New Zealand for a year on the working holiday visa. So I knew that was my first step, and I had my first couple of house sits already organized. But beyond that, I didn't really know where in New Zealand I would be or what additional house sits I would get. I kind of figured out the rest of it once I got there. And then all the other countries I ended up visiting, I also figured out along the way. So the thing is once you start traveling, once you start actually living this lifestyle, there is a learning curve, just like to anything new that you're trying to do. Balancing work, full-time online work, and travel, and exploring, and planning your travel becomes a lot. So you want to have a little bit of it organized and planned out, or at least mapped out before you go, because time becomes a commodity. Time gets away from you so fast once you're actually on the road. You're like, oh great, this is only a 2-hour flight to my next destination, right? But like, take in mind travel to the airport, time sitting in the airport, and then once you get to your destination, the amount of time it takes to get to your accommodation and booking in. It might actually eat up closer to 5 hours of your day and not actually just 2 hours of your day. So just think about those things. Have a little bit, at least maybe the first month or two, figured out of like kind of what you're going to do, so that once you get there and you're learning a new country and culture and adjusting to everything, you don't have to worry about where you're going to be or where you're going to go. So that's just kind of goes back into making a plan. Making a plan is how you're going to get onto your digital nomad journey, and then figuring out some of your travel plans ahead of time will just help you once you're overseas. Okay, so tip number 4 is to think about how you want to travel. And this may change over time. This is not something that you decide once and that's just how it is and you can't do anything different. I personally have tried a lot of different things and I'm in the point now where I'm even considering changing the way that I travel. And by that, I mean, do you want to travel full time? How long do you want to stay in each country? Where are you going to stay in each country? Are you going to do house sitting, which is what I chose to do? Are you going to try to do a lot of couch surfing, stay in hostels? Are you more Airbnb because you need your space? Do you have friends and family that you can stay with in different locations as well? Are you going to do an organized trip like Hacker Paradise or Remote Year? Are you going to do a nomad cruise? Those are a thing and they're really popular. So just think about like how it is you want to travel, how slowly, how quickly. Do you want to stay, if you're in a place where you can stay for 90 days, do you want to stay there for the full 90 days? Do you want to try to move every month? Do you want to do what I did and try to stay in a country as long as you possibly can and stay in New Zealand or Australia for a year? So those are just some ideas of like different ways people travel. Some people also like to have a home base wherever they're from. They still have like an apartment or a house or whatever it is, and they travel every other month, or they travel for 2 to 3 months at a time and then they come home for a little bit. So they're traveling half the year, but they still have a home base. And maybe also your job requires that. That's fine. That's still another way that you can choose to travel. So I say this all the time, but there's no right or wrong way to be a digital nomad. It's just finding what it is that works for you. The other thing kind of in this category and the previous categories, making some travel plans, is knowing a little bit about visas and your passport. So depending on which passport or passports you might hold will kind of determine where you can go for how long. Is it going to be easy for you to get a visa for that country? Is it expensive to get a visa for that country? Things like that. So for my working holiday visa, because that's a really specific type of visa for New Zealand, I knew I had to apply for that online, and I got that. It was actually an e-visa, which was really great. I have to mail anything in, but I got it online before I actually left. Most of my other visas, because I'm on an American passport, I was able to just show up and get a visa at the airport, travel on a tourist visa. That's typically what I do outside of New Zealand. So the only country that I had really to prepare for the visa was Vietnam. And there's all this information online about what you need to bring and how to get it, how to get your letter, how much it costs, things like that. That was probably the only one that I really had to prepare for, but it's good to know those things in advance. It's good to have an idea of where you might want to go and go ahead and look up the visa situation ahead of time. And I even had like a list in my Trello board of visas and countries, and I kind of went through and looked them up one by one. So anytime I had an idea, I was like, oh, I might want to go there. I went ahead and looked that up and made a note of it, so I don't have to keep looking it up. So that's another part of traveling, is knowing and understanding how long you can stay in each country. Step number 5 is just to go for it. Seriously, like you can do all the planning and organizing, but don't let the plans and organization keep you from actually doing it. So do what you can. and then you just have to go for it. Because as I mentioned earlier, it's something that you have to learn once you get on the road. It's something you have to learn how to balance, the ways to think, the ways to start viewing, getting around. It's funny, I'm home a little bit now just for the holidays, and I don't have a car, which in Texas means I can't really go anywhere. And I'm gonna go up and see my sister in a little bit, and they're asking like, how are you gonna get there? I was like, I don't know, bus, train, fly, whatever. Because now that I'm home, I have to put my traveler brain on and not my like resident brain. So like there's a different, you start thinking about things a little differently once you get on the road and learning how to balance and manage your time, and that takes time to learn. So you just have to go for it. You just have to do it. There are some things that you cannot plan for ahead of time, and that's okay. Do what you can. Figure out how you're going to make money, figure out where you're going to stay, and figure out where you want to go, and everything else can be figured out after the fact. So for the question of how do you become a digital nomad, those are my top 5 tips, and that's what I recommend, and that's a little bit of what I did to become a digital nomad. Thank you so much for showing up every week. I really appreciate it. I come out with new videos every Tuesday, so if you don't want to miss any, make sure you subscribe, and you can also follow me on Instagram at Traveling Taylor. I will see you next week.